Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished and senior entrepreneur from Mexico, Mr. Manuel Barreiro Castañeda. Manuel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you. Manuel is the founder and chairman of the Aston Group, which is a real estate and private equity company. So, Manuel, let's start with the Aston Group. Tell me about the group, your activities, and your motivation to start it.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, the Aston Group is a private equity group with a strong focus on real estate, but we also have significant investments in technology and green energy. We like to give back to our communities. That's one of our, main goals, and we try to do it, through this company. You asked me, what's the motivation to start this, and I will try to give you kind of a long answer to get to the point. But inequality in Mexico is rather high. These translate into all aspects of the society, including the industry. Mexico is in a good way the manufacturing arm of the US and accounts for more than 40% of the nation's GDP. And these inequalities have been present in the industry for decades. So while there are state-of-the-art industrial facilities for American and European companies in Mexico, at the same time, there are some deficient quality facilities for small and medium-sized national corporations. It prevents SMEs from being part of the supply chain that export products directly or indirectly. In many cases, some of these businesses are very successful, but they just do not have the proper space to work. So my motivation was really to do my best to put down the supply chain to these companies and improve the quality of life and the economy of the families running these businesses. So that was really the point, and that's what we still try to give back.
Very interesting. And as a private equity investor, why did you select to focus on real estate and not so many other sectors?
I am a very creative person and really enjoy good architecture and design.
Okay.
And real estate is inspiring me for me because every time you start a new project, you have a new challenge of making something aesthetic and functional for the community, but which can also be profitable. I love this challenge, and for me, every project is unique, so you don't get bored. So that's really the reason why every time something is different.
Wonderful. And how have you seen real estate evolve and change since you started?
Yeah, well, it has changed a lot for sure. I believe technology has played a significant role in real estate, as in many other industries. I remember some of my days in college when architects and firms were still drawing hundreds of blueprints to present a project. Today, AutoCAD, BIM, and 3D rendering have changed all this. And the time response between clients and us has been reduced by 90%. And I think this is, the same among all the industry. Also, back in the day, no one looked at the green aspect of buildings or construction. Today, clean and renewable energy play a significant role in the industry. For example, some of our clients in our industrial buildings will not be allowed to sell their products to some OEMs in Europe by 2025 if they do not have a portion of their energy coming from clean sources. So this is huge. This means that large companies are pushing down the green agenda to all their suppliers, even if they are on the other side of the world. And for a country like Mexico, where the federal government is still investing in oil and gas and block investments in green energies, it can be very, very challenging if you want to push this type of investments. But I still think that, you have to do it. So, I think, it's changed a lot, especially the velocity in which deals are done now versus what they were done 20 years ago.
Very interesting. And yet, when you look at developing countries like Mexico or India, for the average human being, a home is the single largest investment they will make in their life.
Correct.
Why is it so difficult to own homes in the developing world as compared to the developed world?
I mean, there are many aspects, and obviously depends on each country. But compared to developed countries, the difference between salary and house price is much wider.
Yeah.
One. Two, financing rates are extremely high, preventing many buyers from acquiring a house. Interest rates are usually in double digits.
Correct.
Therefore, if you want to get a 20-year mortgage with these rates, you will most likely not start paying principal until after year 10. If you're suddenly unemployed for an extended period, you might lose 10 years of payments and still have no home equity. So that prevents many people from buying a home.
And do you see this kind of changing a little bit, or do you still think, just before you was talking to the former global chief economist of Citigroup, and I'm asking him a question that every politician seems to promise a home, clothes, and food to the people. And 100 years have passed and nothing has happened. My question to you is, do you think homes will ever come in the reach of the poor people?
As you say, they're politicians, so they will talk, they have talked for 100 years and they will talk for another 100 more. But I think they do try to change this. I don't think it's an easy task. I think it's complicated, especially in our countries. But I think, if they start really pushing the housing agenda and the low-income housing, I think over time this should get better. But I think it's still a hard one.
Very interesting. And as a real estate investor, do you see any kind of linkage between commercial real estate and residential real estate?
Again, it varies from country to country, but in many cases, I think they are linked. In general, all real estate has similar fundamentals, like demographics. For example, many retailers need a strong residential demographics before launching a large retail project. And in other cases, a large retail project will attract good housing and projects around. So the problem when a large retail project is launched before housing is in place is the amount of time you might need before you have all the required demographics to achieve the desired sales they want. And the problem on the other side is when the demographics are already there, then the land becomes too expensive to develop. So the balance, I think, is that link. When should they go, before or after or in the middle? And I think that's the question everybody makes when they want to make money on either side of the residential or the retail sector.
Wow. The other thing is that, and I'm seeing this trend in India, seeing this trend in a lot of other countries, that a lot of young people are now renting instead of buying.
Yeah.
So the demand will be there, but acquisition may not happen. I'd love to get your perspective.
Yeah. As you said, in undeveloped countries, there is a big problem, and their biggest investment is their house. And I think this is changing, but it can vary depending on the country. In some cultures like Mexico or Spain, having a house it's very important, even though the cost might be high and it's not always the best option. But as you said, having that provides some sort of security for them. However, in many other cases, more and more young people are renting, but I don't think it's because they really understand the real estate market, but because they want more flexibility, and more they're able to work from anywhere in the world. And this renting has a spikes in COVID-19. So I think it has to do a little bit more with technology and communication rather than something changing in their minds or them becoming more educated on the real estate sector.
And there's a trend that has been there for generations in India, which is buy land, because nobody is making more land in the world. China has the same thing. Is it something similar in your country as well?
Yes, in Mexico, people still buy some land, but there is not that much land, and especially not that much land with infrastructure. Infrastructure is expensive, and it's hard now to provide infrastructure to raw land, outside the cities. So I think this trend is also very similar in Mexico as as in country or in China, as you mentioned.
Now let me move to your private equity and real estate. And I'm not a real estate expert, but I've been reading about the REITs and other value-added projects. Tell us, for our viewers and listeners, what is a REIT? How are real estate companies using this as a financing tool?
Yeah, today the real estate market, it's valued at around 3.5 to 3.8 trillion dollars, but it's expected to grow to 5.8 to 6 trillion by 2030. It's huge, changing rapidly. So more and more institutions and individuals are trying to get a piece of the market. And REITs and some other vehicles are good investment platforms for individuals to be able to invest or take a piece of this. REITs and different types of institutional and even not institutional investors are looking for new ways to participate in a more significant role at the industry that is evolving. Therefore, I think all these companies are trying to invest into these vehicles that are growing to be able to get a piece of that. A good example is Singapore. Singapore has probably, I don't know the exact percentage, but most part of the real estate is owned by different REITs or private investors or institutional funds. So that's changing and that's becoming a trend. So if you think, all this growth is going to happen over the next, 7 to 8 years, everybody's trying to find a way to get a piece of that. So, and REITs are a good way to invest.
Interesting. There is also a lot of talk, Manuel, about something called green buildings. And I know this is something to do with climate change, etc. But do help us understand, what is a green building?
Yeah, they are, a lot of investors and developers are also looking into what they call green buildings. And it's really nothing more than making the buildings more eco-friendly. For example, recycle the water that they use, being able to use solar panels for their energy, try to reduce the carbon footprint. That's the different idea. And there are different institutions that provide certain certifications when you're doing that. The Nordic countries are very keen on these and are really, really trying to push the agenda. For example, in Norway, they are going all the way to say, let's do not use steel anymore. Let's only use timber that comes from different areas that they have been growing the timber and things like that, using less concrete, making the buildings more efficient in terms of electricity. So that's the idea. As everybody else in the world, everybody's trying to reduce this carbon footprint.
Interesting. You also speak about urban and sustainable city development.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the work you're doing, and please give me an example.
Sure. In my view, if you want a development project to be successful over time, I think it should be sustainable and inclusive in a long-term social perspective. All our projects aim to achieve this characteristic. A current example is a project that we will launch at the end of the year called Querétaro Reborn. This project attempts to pedestrianize an area of the city, to prioritize people over cars, to impulse biking in the city, reduce the carbon footprint, and create larger social sites that are more inclusive and will help reduce inequalities. And of course, we want to develop nice areas and provide more green space and obviously have good economic returns. However, the essential part of the project is the well-being of its people, mainly focusing on the next generation and not only on the outcome of the next 5 years. We really think our children to enjoy this project, and it's a 10-year project. So we're really looking on a long-term perspective rather than just, the financial returns that we might be able to achieve in the next 5 or 10 years.
Interesting. And when you look at mega cities, like a Mexico City or a New Delhi or a Beijing, populations in excess of 20 million people. What are your thoughts on making such highly densely populated cities more sustainable?
I think public transport it's a very important one. I am very, very high on biking and making some of the cities more sustainable and more social inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we use so many cars in these cities prevent us from having that. So, the more the government invests in public transportation, the more that we could make these cities more livable.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, in India, I haven't been there in a while, but in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
you can spend hours and hours in your car every day.
Right.
And, that's not quality of life. I don't know if I remember this correctly, but I believe somebody said that, a good city is not a city that has cars, but a city where everybody can take the public transport. That's a rich city, not the city where everybody's buying cars.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. So yeah, I think public transportation it's extremely important to be able to change this.
And do you see these mega cities actually moving towards that trend?
Yeah, Mexico City or some other cities?
Mexico City. Yes.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think they are trying, but I am not seeing real results. I mean, I think they have some other agendas currently in the government, like oil and gas, which I believe are going, on the other way. If they will push more this agenda, I think big changes can be done because Mexico City has a lot of potential to grow and to improve. So it's something that they just need to be more open about it and push the agenda.
One more question relating to real estate, and then I have some questions for you personally. And this is about technology.
Okay.
I was talking to a real estate developer in India the other day, and he was saying that while technology is being used at the back end, at the front end, not much has changed. I'd love to get your perspective from Mexico.
Yeah, I think it's happening everywhere in the world. I mean, I think it's changing, and it's changing rapidly. For example, now crowdfunding apps and technology provide many developers the tool to fund their projects. As I mentioned before, this market is growing tremendously over the next few years. So in some countries, like in Mexico, some assets can now be sold overnight with this platform, while others might take months or years to achieve the same. So this is a huge change in a country like Mexico, where not everybody has access to institutional money. The velocity in which deals take place today is amazing now, thanks to technology. And I think most investors and developers need to really think about this seriously, because otherwise somebody is going to replace them or take their place. Mexico, not so much related to real estate, but it's related to technology. People is now buying cars through some of these fintech apps, and crowdfunding is becoming bigger and bigger in Mexico. So really, a lot of people is selling some of their project in pieces at very, very rapid phases, when some others are taking years to sell their projects. And I think this is changing, and this will leave out some of the current developers if they don't start thinking about this.
Amazing. So Manuel, I'm now going to move to a few questions for you personally, because my guests love to get to know my viewers and listeners love to get to know my guest.
Sure.
My first question is, in your life and your career, what would you say are 3 key milestones?
3 milestones in my career. I would say that you always need to consider your community or your country when working on a project, and it does not have to be real estate related. I think any project will go a long way if you believe it will provide a benefit for the community while making money. On the contrary, the project might not succeed if you only consider financial results. And I think this is happening more and more every day. The second one, I would say, listen to new generations. They have a lot to teach us. There are many ways to develop one idea, project, or technology. And if we refuse to listen, I think we'll probably be outdated and replace it soon. I think it's important. And as you mentioned today, your audience has a lot of young people, so I think that's important. And the third one, I think we should really think about the environment, not because it is trendy today in the world, but because it's a real challenge we all face. And we need to make sure that we leave a better world for our children and not something worse.
Wonderful. And my last question to you, what would you say is your leadership style?
My leadership style. I have a very flat structure in which all levels interact. I believe in open doors, and I'm always open to new ideas. I let young people provide input and challenge traditional methods or standard practices, because I think the new generations have a lot to teach. And nowadays, young people look for work not only to pay their bills, but to feel they're working in places that give back to their community and can change the status quo. And this is a significant change, I guess, from previous generations. But to summarize, I am open and flexible, but I like results. I am very, very strict regarding client service, especially, and financial returns. I do not mind people working remotely, but as long as they're always available to answer our clients. So, somehow, if they want to be working remotely, they will be depending on their phones a lot and on their results, but I'm open for that. And I'm open always to give good ideas, and everybody can come to my office. It doesn't have to be, the general managers or the president or anybody else. So I guess that's the summary.
Fantastic. Manuel, on that note, and your 3 amazing lessons: build for the benefit of the community, listen to the new generation, think of the environment. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about the Aston Group, about the amazing work that you are doing in the world of real estate. Thank you also for speaking to me about a lot of your own thoughts on sustainable cities, developments, REITs, and the young people. Thank you again, and good luck.
No, thank you very much to you for the time. It was very, very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.